The doll in the attic, the inheritance. When Samantha's grandmother passed away, she left behind a strange assortment of belongings. The family wasn't particularly large, and Samantha had always been close to her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents passed away in a car accident when she was just a child. As the closest family member, Samantha inherited her grandmother's house, an old, weathered place on the outskirts of town, known for its creaking floorboards and eerie atmosphere. Among the items bequeathed to her was an antique doll, one Samantha had never seen before. Its porcelain face was chipped in places, with a faded pink dress and tangled hair. Its eyes, dark, glassy orbs, seemed to follow her wherever she moved. Samantha had a faint recollection of her grandmother mentioning the doll once, referring to it as Esmeralda, but there was something about the doll that made her skin crawl, a cold, unnatural feeling that made her uneasy. Samantha placed the doll in the attic, away from the living spaces, hoping to forget about it. Life was busy, and with a new job on the horizon, she had no time to dwell on creepy toys or unsettling feelings. But strange things started happening. It began with small, almost imperceptible incidents. Doors left open when she was sure she had closed them. Objects slightly moved from their usual places. At first, she dismissed it as her own forgetfulness, chalking it up to stress from settling into the new house. But soon, the disturbances escalated. One evening, as Samantha prepared for bed, she heard a faint sound coming from the attic. It was a soft thudding, as if something was being dragged across the floor. She hesitated, her heart racing. The attic had always been a place she avoided, ever since she'd moved in. The idea of going up there in the dead of night filled her with dread, but the noise persisted. Reluctantly, she grabbed a flashlight and made her way up the narrow stairs that led to the attic. The door creaked open, and she peered into the darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the weak beam of her flashlight cut through the gloom. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on the old, tattered doll sitting in the corner, its dark eyes staring at her. The moment she saw it, a wave of nausea hit her. The doll hadn't been sitting in that spot earlier. She was sure of it, but now it sat in the center of the attic, as if it had been moved. Feeling a cold chill run down her spine, Samantha backed away from the attic, shutting the door quickly behind her. She hurried downstairs, trying to shake the feeling that those lifeless eyes were still watching her. The strange occurrences over the next few weeks. The strange occurrences in the house only intensified. Samantha would hear footsteps at odd hours of the night, but whenever she checked, no one was there. Lights flickered unpredictably, and her once quiet home felt oppressive, as though it was breathing alive in some unnatural way. One night, she was lying in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The house was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from upstairs. Startled, Samantha jumped out of bed and rushed to the source of the noise. It was coming from the attic. This time, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone, ready to call for help if necessary, and ascended the stairs. Her heart pounded in her chest as she opened the door to the attic, half expecting to find someone or something waiting for her. But there was no one. The only thing out of place was the doll. It had moved again. This time, it was lying on its side in the middle of the floor, as though it had fallen or been thrown. Samantha's pulse quickened. She knew she hadn't touched it. She hadn't been in the attic since the last incident. She picked up the doll, intending to throw it away. But as she touched it, a strange sensation washed over her. The air around her seemed to thicken, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw the doll's lips curl into a slight smile. Terrified, she dropped the doll and backed out of the attic, slamming the door shut behind her. Something was wrong with the doll, something evil. But what could she do? It was just a toy, or so she kept telling herself. The diary a few days later, while cleaning out her grandmother's bedroom, Samantha found an old leather-bound diary tucked away in the back of a drawer. She opened it, curious to learn more about her grandmother's life. As she flipped through the yellowed pages, she noticed a particular section that caught her eye. The doll has a name, Esmeralda. It was given to me by a woman I knew long ago, a woman involved in strange, arcane practices. She said the doll was special, but I didn't believe her at first. That was before the strange occurrences began. Samantha's hands trembled as she read the words. The diary detailed her grandmother's growing fear of the doll. Esmeralda wasn't just any doll. According to the diary, it had been used in some kind of ritual, a vessel for something ancient and malevolent. Her grandmother had tried to rid herself of the doll many times, but it always found its way back. The final entry in the diary was ominous. I've hidden her away, but she won't stay hidden for long. I fear what will happen if she's found again. Whoever finds this, be warned, Esmeralda is dangerous. Samantha's blood ran cold. She now understood why her grandmother had kept the doll locked away. But it was too late. Esmeralda had been found, and whatever power the doll held was already stirring. The encounters escalate that night. Samantha could hardly sleep. The weight of what she had read haunted her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that the doll was watching her, even from the attic. Her dreams were filled with dark, twisted visions of the doll, of her grandmother, of things that should not exist. The next morning, she resolved to get rid of the doll once and for all. She couldn't live with this fear any longer. Armed with a garbage bag and all the courage she could muster, she headed back to the attic. When she opened the door, she found Esmeralda sitting in the middle of the room, as though waiting for her. The sight of the doll sent a jolt of fear through her, but she pushed it aside. She would not let a toy control her. Without hesitation, she grabbed the doll and shoved it into the garbage bag. She carried it downstairs, out to the backyard, and threw it into the trash bin. It was over, she thought. The doll was gone. But that night, the footsteps returned, louder this time, more deliberate. And they weren't just coming from the attic. They were all around her, echoing through the house. Samantha lay in bed, frozen with terror, as the sound of something or someone approached her bedroom door. The doorknob twisted slowly, and the door creaked open. Samantha held her breath, staring into the darkness. She couldn't see anything, but she could feel that something was there, watching her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. The message read, "You can't get rid of her." Her heart skipped a beat. She looked up, and there, standing at the foot of her bed, was Esmeralda. The doll's dark eyes gleamed in the moonlight, and for the first time, Samantha heard it speak. "I'm not done with you yet." The descent into madness in the following weeks, Samantha's life unraveled. The doll was everywhere. No matter how many times she tried to dispose of it, throwing it away, burning it, even leaving it in the middle of a forest, it always returned. The haunting grew worse. Samantha began hearing whispers at night, soft voices that seemed to come from the walls. Shadows moved on their own, and objects in her house would disappear and reappear in different places. Her friends and coworkers noticed the change in her, She became withdrawn, paranoid, and sleep-deprived. She tried to explain what was happening, but no one believed her. How could they? It sounded absurd, a haunted doll controlling her life. But Samantha knew the truth. The doll wasn't just haunted, it was possessed. And whatever was inside it wanted her. It was feeding off her fear, growing stronger with each passing day. One night, in a moment of desperation, Samantha turned to the internet for answers. She scoured forums and websites dedicated to the paranormal, searching for anyone who might know how to stop the doll. After hours of searching, she found a small, obscure website run by a man claiming to be an expert in haunted objects. She reached out to him, explaining her situation. To her surprise, he responded quickly, offering to help. His name was James, and he had dealt with objects like Esmeralda before. He warned Samantha that destroying the doll wouldn't be enough. To truly rid herself of it, she would need to perform a ritual, a dangerous one. Desperate, and with nothing left to lose, Samantha agreed. The ritual, James arrived a few days later, carrying a small black case filled with strange items, candles, herbs, and a book written in a language Samantha couldn't understand. He explained the ritual in detail. They would need to trap the entity inside the doll and banish it back to where it came from. But the process was risky. If they made a mistake, the entity could grow even stronger. They set up the ritual in the attic, where it all began. The doll sat in the center of a circle drawn in salt, its lifeless eyes staring blankly ahead. Samantha felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach, but she pushed it down. This was her only chance. As James began chanting in this strange language, the air in the room grew cold. The candles flickered wildly, and a low, guttural sound filled the air, a sound that didn't belong in this world. Suddenly, the doll's eyes blinked. Samantha gasped, but James motioned for her to stay calm. He continued chanting, his voice growing louder and more urgent. The doll twitched, its limbs moving unnaturally. A dark, shadowy figure began to form around it, writhing and twisting in the air. Samantha's heart raced as the entity inside the doll fought against the ritual. The room shook, and the shadows on the walls seemed to come alive, reaching out toward her. Then, with a final, deafening screech, the entity was pulled back into the doll. The room fell silent, and the doll slumped over, lifeless once more. It was over, or so she thought. The final revelation in the days following the ritual, Samantha felt a sense of relief. The house was quiet again, and the oppressive feeling that had plagued her for months was gone. She even dared to believe that the nightmare was finally over. But one night, as she lay in bed, she heard a familiar sound, the soft, rhythmic thud of something being dragged across the floor. Her blood ran cold. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest. Slowly, she turned toward the source of the noise. And there, standing in the doorway, was Esmeralda. The doll's lips curled into a twisted smile. "Did you really think you could get rid of me?" Samantha screamed, but no sound came out. The darkness closed in around her, and the last thing she saw before everything went black was the doll, its eyes gleaming with malevolent glee.